Russia has rained more than 100 bombs on Ukraine. Ukrainian missiles are crashing into Russian buildings. The war is intensifying. But there's a shift. Instead of being defensive, Kyiv is seeking leverage and pushing its Western allies to do more. All of this comes just days after Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi visited Ukraine, and this has triggered a debate in India. Was the visit even worth it? Or was it a mistake? Tonight we'll discuss this. In France, the police have arrested the CEO of Telegram, the messaging app, for hosting harmful content and not moderating it. By that logic, will they also arrest Mark Zuckerberg and Elon Musk? Or is the Russian-origin Telegram founder just a soft target? In Bangladesh, violent protests are back, this time between the students and a paramilitary force. We'll tell you why. Why has India's stock market regulator introduced new rules for IPOs? Kolkata rape accused is put through a lie detector test. What has he revealed? How the Malayalam film industry is having its Me Too moment with top names under the scanner. Why American rapper Macklemore has cancelled his Dubai concert over the Sudan war. And Australia becomes the latest country to give its workers the right to disconnect, but does it even help? All this and more coming up. The headlines first. West Asia remains on the boil. Hezbollah targets a key Israeli military base near Tel Aviv. Iran, which backs this group, Hezbollah, has praised the attack. Yesterday, Israel launched airstrikes into Lebanon. The Netanyahu government claims to have thwarted a major attack. Japan scrambles fighter jets after a Chinese aircraft violates its airspace. This is the first such incursion by the Chinese military into Japanese airspace. Tokyo summons China's acting ambassador to lodge a protest. Beijing is yet to comment on the incident. Pakistan reportedly invites Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi to Islamabad for the Shanghai Cooperation Organization or SCO summit, which will be held in October. It is unlikely that Prime Minister Modi will travel to Pakistan, but he could send a minister to represent India at the summit. Denmark shuts its embassies in junta-led Mali and Burkina Faso. It is part of their new Africa strategy. Copenhagen says military coups have limited their role in the Sahel region. Since seizing power, the juntas of Mali and Burkina Faso have turned to Russia and shunned the West. And Bulgaria prepares for yet another election. The Balkan country will hold a new snap vote in October. This will be their 7th general election in 3.5 years. The last election was held in the month of June. It had the lowest voter turnout since the fall of communism in the country. The chilling footage you just saw is from southern Russia, where a drone targeted an apartment complex. It brought back memories of 9/11, the attack in the US. Thankfully, the damage was not too much. Russia blames Ukraine for this attack. It's a kamikaze-style assault, and Moscow is responding with full force. Today, Russia targeted Kyiv, the capital city of Ukraine, with a wave of drones and missiles. The bombing operation began at midnight and it continued well past daybreak. Thousands of Ukrainians fled to metro stations. They double up as bomb shelters, so people flock to these metro stations when there's bombing. And as Russia continued its strikes, many Ukrainians were heard singing their national anthem. Russia targeted not just Kyiv. Bombs and missiles flew in all directions. Kyiv said 15 Ukrainian regions were hit, and Russia also went after their civilian infrastructure like water and electricity supplies in Ukraine. 100 drones and more than 100 missiles were fired from the Russian side. At least 5 people were killed. There were blackouts in some regions in Ukraine, but Kyiv says it was able to defend large parts of its territories. However, Russia is not done yet. It has ruled out peace talks and it seems to be preparing for a bigger military response.
There were no negotiations. As you know, the topic of negotiations at the moment has pretty much lost its relevance. There are a lot of reports about various contacts in the media, and not all of them are correct. It is not about a separate decision. Such hostile actions cannot remain without an appropriate response. There will definitely be a response.
So Russia is promising payback for Kursk. That's the region Ukraine invaded 3 weeks ago. It's Russian territory and Ukraine controls almost 1,300 square kilometers of it now, 1,300 square kilometers. That's more land than Russia has been able to capture over the past 8 months in Ukraine. Ukraine also has managed to destroy several bridges in the region. This has affected the Russian forces on the battlefield. The frontline troops remain cut off from their bases. And this has emboldened Ukrainian forces. They've made steady advances into Russia and launched more ambitious attacks, like the drone strike we saw earlier. So Russia is now trying to turn the tables. They're trying to shift the momentum of the battlefield by putting pressure on Kyiv through an extensive bombing operation. Meanwhile, Zelensky is asking his Western backers to step up.
Putin does stick to his style. He is a sick creature that has been obvious for a long time. But it is also clear that he can only do what the world allows him to do. Weakness, lack of decisions fuels terror.
Zelensky wants the West to honor their commitments and provide Kyiv with more air defenses and missiles. More importantly, he wants timely deliveries. Kyiv is under attack, but it also sees this as an opportunity. An opportunity to push the West to extract more concessions. Ukraine's foreign minister has floated 2 demands. He wants the West to permit long-range strikes inside Russia using Western weapons. Remember, this has been a long-standing request. The West has given billions of dollars worth of weapons to Ukraine, but it also dictates how these weapons should be used. Ukraine is not allowed to conduct long-range strikes on Russia. But they want this restriction to be lifted now. That's the first demand. The second demand is about air defenses. Ukraine wants its Western partners to step up to help protect its skies. It wants the West to shoot down Russian missiles and drones when they get close to Ukraine's airspace. It wants the West to repel aerial attacks on Ukraine. Now, these demands suggest a shift in Kyiv's approach. Earlier, its forces had a defensive posture. The goals were limited to defending their territory and reclaiming lands occupied by the Russians. But that's no longer the case. Zelensky is seeking leverage now. Over the weekend, Ukraine and Russia exchanged more than 200 prisoners of war. Ukraine had captured more than 100 Russian soldiers in Kursk, and it traded those soldiers for Ukrainian troops in Russian custody. So soldiers for soldiers. Zelensky wants to do the same to regain Ukrainian territories, and that means taking the fight deeper inside Russia.
And since Putin is occupying us and does not think about his territories, we understand perfectly well that this is exactly the case, because we know the air defense in Russia. We were striking at their energy sector after they hit our energy sector. We hit their military airports, and we know where they have air defense and where they do not. Everything has been checked.
It's a risky strategy. Until last week, it was showing results. But can Kyiv stay the course now? Can it keep fighting Russian soldiers in Kursk at a time when Russia is dropping more than 100 bombs on Ukrainians? Kyiv's resilience will be tested in the coming days. So the attacks are intensifying. And the need of the hour is diplomacy, any kind of talks or negotiations, something that will bring the tempers down. India made an attempt last week. Prime Minister Narendra Modi travelled to Kyiv. He met President Volodymyr Zelensky, he visited war memorials and called for peace. But the trip has split public opinion back home. Some say it was a great balancing act, others say it was unnecessary, that India walked into a trap. And a big reason for that criticism is Zelensky himself. He held a long press conference after Prime Minister Modi left, and some of his comments were quite sharp.
Prime Minister is to see your people. And I need very much to find key to your country, because I very much need your country on our side, not balancing between us and Russia. If during official visit of Prime Minister you attack the children in the hospital, it's a very important moment. So he had to recognize after that he doesn't respect India or doesn't control his army. And he will tell you that Putin controls everything. So he can't say that he doesn't control his army. So it means that he doesn't respect Indian Prime Minister.
We get the sentiment. Hundreds of Ukrainians have died, thousands have been displaced, and there is no peace in sight. So we get the president's desperation. But you see, in diplomacy, you must hide your sentiments. You must welcome even the smallest of gains. And Zelensky did not do that. Instead, he criticized behind India's back. So tonight, let's take a closer look at Prime Minister Modi's trip. Was it necessary? What did it achieve? And did India walk into a trap? First, the timing. Modi visited Moscow in July. This year in July, he held a crucial meeting with President Vladimir Putin, even exchanged a hug with him. Of course, Ukraine and the West did not approve. Zelensky called it a huge disappointment. Now, India has normally ignored such criticism, but this time, Prime Minister Modi went a step ahead. He decided to visit Kyiv personally. In diplomacy, this is called hyphenation. You visit Israel, you also visit Palestine. You visit Russia, you also visit Ukraine. Sort of like playing both sides. The question is, did India have to do this? Russia is one of New Delhi's oldest strategic partners. Ukraine is not. No Indian Prime Minister had even visited Kyiv until last week. So you could say there is no equivalence. Russia is way more important than Ukraine. Then why did the Prime Minister visit Kyiv? What did this visit achieve? Well, broadly, three things. Number one, it set the record straight on India's policy. It is not pro-Putin, it is not pro-war, it is not neutral. As Prime Minister Modi said, India is on the side of peace. And this sets New Delhi apart from China or Iran. Those countries are actively supporting Russia's war, but India is not. We buy Russian oil to keep inflation down, not to fund the war. If Ukraine can sell us cheaper oil, we would buy that too. It is not a political decision, it is a financial decision. And looks like Ukraine has finally understood that point. You may remember their comments from 2022 when Kyiv compared Russian oil to buying Ukrainian blood. At least that rhetoric has disappeared. Point number two, a check on Russia. Yes, Moscow is an old partner for India, but it's also an ally of China, and that is a reality. Putin and Xi Jinping have a no-limits partnership. So if things go south, who will Putin back, India or China? We don't know. Plus, Russia is not as reliable as before. Consider the S-400 missile system. India bought that Russian missile in 2019. 3 systems have been delivered. 2 more were supposed to come this year, but the war has caused a delay. The new deadline is 2026. Same with financial transactions. India has invested billions of dollars in Russian energy giants, but the returns are few. India has a 20% stake in the Sakhalin-1 oil field. So New Delhi wanted oil equity, basically a share of the oil from the field. But Russia said no. Instead of oil, it wants to give India dividends. Just one problem though. Russia cannot transfer money to India. Their energy firms are cut off from the global payment systems. So unpaid dividends are mounting. It has reached almost $600 million. Imagine that. Russia owes Indian state-owned companies $600 million in dividends. While that remains unpaid, why would India want more dividends? And don't forget the issue of Indians fighting in the Russian army. We're talking about 30 to 50 Indian nationals. Most of them were duped into joining Russia. Putin promised to repatriate them, but 2 months on, there is no update. So the bottom line is quite clear. Russia is not the reliable rock that it used to be, whether it's for defense or business. Which brings us to the final point, the need for diplomacy. You see, wars often go into autopilot. The fighting becomes routine, the destruction is normalized, and you forget that there is an alternative, a possibility of peace. You forget that. Prime Minister Modi reminded Zelensky of that. He urged Ukraine to hold peace talks. And it's important to keep this conversation alive because the West will not, Russia will not, so someone must. India lost nothing by undertaking this journey. Our ties with Russia remain strong, but conditions apply, and our strategic autonomy unscathed. At the same time, we gained a few things. We built more trust with Ukraine, we provided clarity on our position and put the focus back on diplomacy. So we say that's a step forward in this deadlocked conflict. It's just another Saturday. It was just another Saturday for Pavel Durov. That's the Telegram CEO. He was on his private jet traveling from Baku, set to land near Paris. So it seemed business as usual. But the moment he landed, there was a plot twist. Durov was detained. The police arrested him and currently he is in French custody. President Emmanuel Macron says there is no political motive here, that his government is not involved. Now, Durov can be held for 96 hours, that is 4 days. After that, two things can happen. Either he'll be charged or he'll be released. We don't know what it will be. But here's what we do know about his arrest. It is linked to Telegram, the messaging app that he co-founded. So who is Pavel Durov? Why is he called the Russian Zuckerberg? What is Telegram and how is it linked to his arrest? Let's look at Durov first. He's 39 years old, born in Russia in the city of St. Petersburg. In the year 2006, his life changed. He was a college student then. Facebook had just launched and it was all the rage. So Durov was inspired. He wanted to replicate it in Russia, and that very year he launched something called Kontakte or VK. It looked exactly like Facebook. And it turned out to be a game changer. VK was extremely popular in Russia. It grew to a $3 billion company and it earned Durov a moniker, the Mark Zuckerberg of Russia. That's what he was called. But Durov was nothing like Zuckerberg. He was mysterious, often mercurial. He was known for weird stunts. In 2012, he showered money on people on the streets from VK's headquarters. As his profile grew, he also ran into trouble. In 2011, he found Russian police outside his apartment. They wanted him to shut down the account of Alexei Navalny. Navalny, you would remember, was a Putin critic, also a popular opposition leader in Russia. Moscow wanted to silence him. Durov refused to shut his account. Now, this was a bold move. It pitted him against the Russian government. Then in 2014, Russia annexed Crimea. Moscow asked Durov for the personal data of Ukrainian leaders on VK. Again, Durov refused. But he could not withstand the pressure, so he sold the company and left Russia. At that time, Durov had around $300 million in his account. He decided to build something new and he developed Telegram. He did it while traveling from one country to another. In 2013, Telegram was launched quietly with no fanfare, after which Durov settled in Dubai. By the way, he has French citizenship. It's not clear how he got it, but that's what he has. Of course, Telegram did not go down well with Russia, so initially Moscow tried to ban the app. Soon they gave up on it. What's even more interesting is that Moscow still considers Durov a citizen, and it's slamming his arrest.
The arrest of Pavel Durov means that there is no freedom of speech, that the freedom of speech in Europe is dead. Elon Musk is free, Mark Zuckerberg is free, but Pavel Durov is now in prison. Why? Because he's Russian. He's a Russian by nationality and he's Russian by his citizenship. So he has been traced as a person to be a scapegoat for the West as an evil Russian.
Now, Durov is worth around $15.5 billion. And like most billionaires, he has his eccentricities. He wears all black, he leads a solitary life, he quotes from The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, and he boasts of his sperm donations. What he cares about most, apparently, is privacy and freedom of speech, and it shows in his creation, Telegram, the messaging app. It's quite similar to WhatsApp. It has around 950 million users. So it is one of the biggest social media platforms out there, 950 million users. And what makes Telegram so attractive? It's the same privacy. Durov calls it a free platform. He refuses to moderate the messages. Telegram also does not share data. It does not hand it out to governments. It does not sell it to other companies. The other unique thing about this is group sizes. Take WhatsApp, for example. It limits groups to 1,000 people. But in Telegram, it can go up to 200,000 people, 200,000 people in one group. It's useful for things like independent news channels or pro-democracy groups to disseminate information. But it also makes it a cesspool for misinformation, neo-Nazi groups, child trafficking content, drug trafficking and terror-related content. And all of this has made Telegram a target in the past as well. In 2018, Iran tried to ban it. So did Russia. Spain accused it of intellectual property violation. In 2023, Brazil blocked it briefly. So it's been in the crosshairs of governments for a while, and now France has made its case. Authorities in France have accused Telegram of failing to moderate content and not cooperating with authorities. So France's argument is quite simple. There is harmful content on Telegram. The platform is not moderating it. So let's arrest the CEO. And what is Telegram saying? It says Durov has nothing to hide. He is a regular in Europe. He is a French citizen. The platform abides by EU laws, so they don't understand what this arrest is about. And they may have a point. Such an arrest is unprecedented because it boils down to one argument, the one that big tech loves to use. Can a platform be held responsible for what its users do? Telegram says no, but clearly France does not agree. Durov's arrest has generated a lot of anger. It has become a rallying cry for free speech advocates. The arrest has won Durov some powerful friends too, perhaps none more influential than another social media tycoon, Elon Musk. Musk has been up in arms over Durov's arrest. He's been tweeting up a storm on X, formerly known as Twitter. Take a look at some of his posts. POV, it's 2030 in Europe and you're being executed for liking a meme. Hashtag free Pavel. With a clip from an interview where Durov praises Musk's takeover of Twitter. Then there's this post. Musk replies to a person who asked an interesting question. The question was, why don't they arrest Mark Zuckerberg for enabling child predators? I say it's interesting because of the context. Mark Zuckerberg is similar to Pavel Durov. He is also the founder and CEO of a social media platform, and not just one. Zuckerberg controls 3 major platforms: Facebook, Instagram and WhatsApp. You get reports like this ever so often. Illegal drugs being sold on Facebook, terrorism videos on WhatsApp. And the point the ex-user was trying to highlight, vast pedophile networks on Instagram. All of those things take place on Zuckerberg's platforms. And they've been a menace for years. So why isn't the French police trying to detain Mark Zuckerberg for questioning? Well, Elon Musk has the answer. He says it's because Zuckerberg has already caved to censorship pressure. Musk says that Zuckerberg, and I'm quoting here, Zuckerberg censors free speech and gives governments backdoor access to user data. That is not untrue. Zuckerberg's platforms comply with government regulations, no matter how questionable the government. The platforms do cave when given legal notices or orders from the police. And why just them? Most social media platforms do this. They have to if they want to stay in business. Elon Musk himself is no exception. He's very gung-ho about free speech in the US, but in other countries, including in India, Musk toes the line. And frankly, it makes sense. He's not here to change the world. He may still fight for free speech in his own country if he wants to. He has to live there after all. But every other nation is just a market they can get kicked out of. So Musk, Zuckerberg and all the rest meekly comply. In that way, Durov was different. Durov fled his own country in 2014 after he refused to censor the political opposition on social media. He fled Russia and then searched for a new headquarters, finally deciding on Dubai. So that's one major difference. Zuckerberg and Musk comply with government rules. Durov did not. But is that the only reason he was arrested by France? Or is there also another factor? Durov gave up the citizenship of his birth country. He is now reportedly a French UAE dual national. So now, even though Russia seems to be trying to help him, he has no protection. And that is what makes this case unique. Can you imagine France arresting Mark Zuckerberg or Elon Musk? Because it's not as though X is problem-free. You have perverts and terrorists there as well. But France won't arrest Elon Musk either. The US would throw a fit. Most social media tycoons are American citizens, rich ones at that. There is no way Washington would allow them to face arrest, and France wouldn't do anything to anger old Uncle Sam. But Pavel Durov is vulnerable. He renounced his Russian citizenship and got a French one. If Moscow complains, Paris can always say it's none of their business. France can say it's an internal matter concerning one of their own citizens. What can Russia really do then? This makes Durov an incredibly soft target. France can try and justify the arrest all it wants to, talk about all the danger the telegram poses. But the fact is that if Durov is a threat because of this, then so are Elon Musk and Mark Zuckerberg and all the others. France should apply the law evenly to all these tycoons or just let Durov go.
Following explosive findings by the Hema Committee report, Malayalam director Ranjit is quit as the chief of Kerala Chalchitra Academy, and this has happened after Bengali actor Srilekha Mitra accused him of sexually harassing her during the auditions of one of his films back in 2009. Along with Ranjit, noted actor Siddique is also resigned as the General Secretary of the Association of Malayalam Movie Artists following sexual assault allegations raised by a woman actor on August 24th. The allegations had sparked fresh trouble for the Pinarayi Vijayan government, which is now facing opposition flack on its alleged inaction over the Justice Hema Committee report. The report has revealed instances of harassment and exploitation of women in the Malayalam film industry, and politics is now erupted over the matter, with both the Congress and BJP accusing the CPIM-led government on trying to protect the accused.
मैं मानता हूँ कि ये बड़ी निहायत शर्मनाक बात कि जहाँ महिलाओं के खिलाफ ऐसे अपराध देखने में आए। हमारी संस्कृति क्या है, हमारा इतिहास क्या है? अरे हम तो चाहे ज्ञान हो, चाहे समृद्धि हो, चाहे शक्ति हो, हर चीज़ को स्त्री
Now let's turn our attention to Bangladesh. The country is facing a new rebellion. A paramilitary force is now up in arms. They're called the Ansar Force. Yesterday, thousands of Ansar personnel gathered outside the secretariat in Dhaka. They nearly took it hostage. The student protesters showed up then to confront them. There were fierce clashes. Close to 40 people are injured. The Ansar Force has put the interim government on notice. They've made several sweeping demands. Our next report tells you more about this latest challenge for Muhammad Yunus and his government.
Chaos has returned to the streets of Bangladesh. Last night, fresh clashes broke out right outside the secretariat in Dhaka. This time, a paramilitary force was venting its anger against the establishment. These men in green uniforms are known as the Ansar. It's an Arabic word which means a helper or a volunteer. The Ansar are tasked with maintaining internal security and public order. With 6 million active and reserved members, they are one of the biggest paramilitary forces in the world. Last week, they started a protest. The Ansar personnel have been unhappy with how they are treated. They don't have a steady salary. Instead, they are paid like daily wage labourers. They also have complaints over what's called a 6-month rest rule. After serving for 3 consecutive years, each Ansar must take a 6-month-long leave. It's mandatory. And Ansar personnel don't get paid during this time. The paramilitary force wants this rule to be abolished. They are also demanding job nationalization. After protesting for a few days, they decided to take their case straight to the secretariat. The Ansar personnel took out a rally and tried to enter the offices in the secretariat, but they couldn't. However, they did manage to secure a meeting with the members of the interim government, including the interim advisor for Home, Mohammad Jahangir Alam Chaudhry. Chaudhry is the de facto Home Minister of Bangladesh, the ministry that oversees this paramilitary force. He promised to abolish the rest rule and ordered a review for the rest of the demands. But the Ansar personnel were not satisfied. They continued their protests. There was a blockade around the secretariat. Many government advisors were unable to leave. The anti-government protesters, the students who ousted Sheikh Hasina, were outraged. The protests' leaders released messages on social media. They asked the students to show up. They claimed the autocratic forces are trying to make a comeback through the Ansar force. The student protesters responded and showed up in large numbers, which led to clashes. The army had to be called in to restore order. This anger within the students has been brewing for a while. They claimed as Bangladesh struggled with the flood situation, the Ansar personnel blocked roads, hurting the movement of relief material. The latest showdown in Dhaka highlights the escalating problems for Bangladesh and its leader Mohammad Yunus. Sheikh Hasina may be out of the picture, but the protests are still raging. Mohammad Yunus has described the country's challenges as mountains, and he's urged Bangladeshis to be patient. But he doesn't have the luxury of time. The longer the unrest continues, the harder it would be for him to bring back order.
Let me introduce the newest player in the Indian stock market, Resourceful Automobile. They started issuing shares last week. Today was the final day of subscription and the demand was crazy, almost 418 times the shares on offer. Now I know what you're thinking. This must be some EV startup or a new car maker on the block. Well, think again. Resourceful Automobile is a Yamaha dealership. They sell bikes and scooters in Delhi. And how many showrooms do they have? 2. Let me repeat that. A dealer with 2 showrooms is listing on the National Stock Exchange or NSE. How is this even possible? Well, NSE has a separate market for small and medium companies. It's called NSE Emerge. These companies are not big enough to list on the main market, so they're listed here. Which brings us back to the showroom guys. Why are they selling shares? Well, the company wants to raise 11 crore rupees, which is around $1.3 million. This money will be used to repay debt and open new showrooms, basically to expand. And it's not a one-off case. Let me introduce Saraswati Sari Depot, a wholesale cloth seller in Kolhapur. They too got listed last week. Another example is Broach Life Care. They run 2 hospitals in Gujarat. Put together, they have around 40 beds and 19 employees and profits around 70 lakh rupees last year. And guess what? They too got listed this month. I guess the simple question is why? India has seen a frenzy of IPOs in the small and medium sector. 182 such companies were listed last year. They raised around 4,600 crore rupees, which is around $550 million. This year, 144 such companies have listed already. They've raised $570 million. Does this sound fishy to you? It does to India's market regulator SEBI. Their chairperson has confirmed signs of manipulation in this market. She said a case is being built. In the meantime, the National Stock Exchange has strengthened guardrails. Only firms with positive cash flow can now list. What does that mean? It means that companies that have money to distribute among shareholders can list. If you have that, you can list. If not, you cannot. This rule will be enforced from next month. Another rule was introduced in July. NSE saw that some of these shares were zooming on the first day of trading. Like Divine Power Energy, it was listed 288% higher than the IPO rate. Or Shivalik Power Control, which was listed 211% higher. So the NSE said no more. It has capped the price rise at 90% on day one. Again, I know what you're thinking. This has to be shady. Well, it is entirely possible. You see, listing on the main market comes with a lot of scrutiny. The regulator will go through your application. It will make sure everything is in order. But NSE Emerge is different. Your IPO application is cleared by the exchange, not by the regulator. So naturally, it's a slippery slope. Companies may manipulate their account books or use shady networks to boost share prices. Of course, the NSE does have some rules. The companies must have a track record of 3 years, a positive net worth, and profits in 2 out of the last 3 financial years. These are the requirements. A lot of companies will qualify this. And the idea itself is not bad. Listing will improve the company's profile. You will get more visibility and your valuations will be decided by the market. So chances are it will be more accurate. Same for investors. You have a new investment instrument, one that is credible and full of potential. Who knows, some of these companies may end up disrupting the market in the future. And if they do, you will make a lot of money. So on paper, it's all good. But in practice, questions remain. Like, what is driving these small companies to the market? Is it because loans are too expensive? Is it because banks are only placing safe bets? Or is it something else? Also, what explains their dizzying rise after listing? Is it organic? Is it manipulated? All of this will have to be investigated. We haven't seen any major scandal so far in this market, but something tells me it's a matter of time. Let's turn to Kolkata now, to the rape and murder case of a doctor there. The CBI's investigation continues. Sunday was a crucial day because the accused underwent a polygraph test, aka a lie detector test. Only one person has been arrested in this case so far, a civic volunteer at the RG Kar Medical College, and he agreed to this test himself. When the judge asked him why, he said because he was innocent, even though most evidence suggests otherwise. And what happened during this test? Well, there is no official word. All we have are reported accounts. Apparently, the accused was unnerved and anxious. He is said to have given many false or unconvincing answers. That's what reports say. And as for the details, it's a bit conflicting. Some reports say that he pleaded innocence, that he found the victim already dead. But other reports claim the opposite, that the CBI confronted him with evidence and that he admitted to the crime. Let's focus on these reports for the moment. They detail the sequence of events on the day of the crime. The accused and his friend visited the RG Kar Medical College. His friend's brother was admitted there. Afterwards, they made plans to drink. They bought alcohol and drank on the road. Then the two men headed to a red light district in Kolkata. En route, he admitted to molesting a woman. The accused's friend had sex at the red light district, but the accused apparently did not. They later came back to the medical college. At 4 a.m., the CCTV captured the accused near the seminar hall. That's where the victim was sleeping. He entered the hall, strangled the victim, raped her, and then left the building. And where did he go? Apparently to the house of a Kolkata police officer who happened to be his friend. Now, just to be clear, this is all based on reported information. None of this has been officially confirmed. Plus, it won't stand in court. You see, a polygraph test is not admissible. It cannot be presented as evidence in court. The CBI can only use it to move the investigation forward, and that's what they plan to do. The CBI, the Central Bureau of Investigation, is conducting this test, this polygraph test, on 7 people. One is obviously the accused. The other is Sandeep Ghosh. the former principal of the RG Kar Medical College. He too was tested on Sunday, but the details are not out yet. The CBI is investigating him in two different cases. One is the rape and murder case of the doctor. The other is a corruption case. Today, the CBI booked him on graft charges. They also searched his home. Remember, Ghosh has a shady track record as principal. He is accused of a number of crimes, from illegally selling unclaimed dead bodies to taking a cut from college tenders. The state police never took action against him, but the CBI has finally booked him. Which brings us to the politics. A student outfit has called for a protest march tomorrow. Their demand is the Chief Minister's resignation. The main opposition party in the state, the BJP, is supporting this protest, but the ruling Trinamool Congress or TMC is calling it an attempt to create unrest. And that's the story in a nutshell. Chief Minister Mamata Banerjee is blaming everyone but herself. Last week, she wrote a letter to the Prime Minister. She claimed that rape cases are rising throughout India. Today, the centre hit back. The Women and Child Development Minister replied to Mamata Banerjee. She flagged a number of issues. West Bengal had been allotted 17 fast-track courts, but only 6 are operational, so 11 courts are yet to be set up. As a result, there is a huge backlog, more than 48,000 rape and POCSO cases. So the political challenge is mounting for Chief Minister Mamata Banerjee. Her party is divided, her state's health system is crippled by strikes, and students want her to resign. The Chief Minister will resist for now, but let's see what the CBI probe unveils. Our next story is from the state of Kerala. Last week, we told you about a landmark report, the Hema Committee report. It exposed a rot in Mollywood. That's what the Malayalam film industry is popularly known as, Mollywood. And the findings were damning. Sextortion, misogyny, gender bias, casting couch, and a male mafia lobby. The report talked about all of it. And it has opened a Pandora's box. New allegations are pouring in. A top Malayalam actor has been accused of rape. His name is Siddiq. The woman says she first made the allegation in 2019, but it was ignored, so now she's repeating it. Now, Siddiq is a Malayalam cinema veteran. He was the General Secretary of the AMMA, that's the Association of Malayalam Movie Artists. It's a top industry body. After he was accused, he stepped down from this post, but he has not addressed the allegations yet. Then there's Ranjit. He's a top filmmaker in the industry, another member of the AMMA. A Bengali actress has accused him of misconduct. This incident took place in 2009. The actress said he took her to a dark room and touched her skin. She felt uncomfortable, so she left. Ranjit has since stepped down as the chairman of the Kerala Film Academy. And it's not just these two. The rot goes far deeper and wider. Several top actors have been accused, so the government had no choice but to act. They're setting up an SIT, a special investigation team, to look into these allegations. This team will investigate the atrocities against women, and this is turning into Mollywood's Me Too moment. Men are finally facing the music, the government is waking up, and actors are calling for industry reform. And we say it's about time. These women suffered for years, their voice is finally being heard, but don't hold your breath for justice to be delivered or the industry to change, because we've all seen this trailer before. Such allegations are not new. Take Bollywood, for example. In 2018, Me Too hit India's biggest movie industry. Women spoke up and shared their horror stories, saying Me Too. Top directors, producers and actors were all accused. The stories spread like a wildfire. There were calls for action. Some production houses were dissolved. Some of the accused lost their jobs or were cancelled. This movement gave so many women hope that justice was finally within reach. It's been 6 years since then. How many of those men have been convicted? The number is 0. No one has been convicted, not a single person. A few cases reached the court, but most of the allegations were old, from decades ago. That meant that there was a lack of evidence, so eventually they were all dismissed. Nothing happened. Soon the accused went back to work. They started getting offers again. Today the perpetrators are out in the open. They're earning even more money. And what happened to the women? Well, they are the ones who face the music. They lost their jobs, they were turned into pariahs, they paid the price for speaking up. So there is a lesson here. When these stories break, everyone talks about them. The media frenzy creates an illusion of change. It did so for Bollywood. It's doing the same for Mollywood. But the fact of the matter is, real change is slow. It requires more than a hashtag. It requires more than a moment of outrage. It's not enough to say "Me Too." We must also ask, what now? What can we do to ensure that this never repeats again? How do we hold those in power accountable? Right now, abusers are being named and shamed. Some have lost their jobs, others may follow. A few may also face legal consequences. But what about the systems that protect them? They remain intact. These are powerful networks of influence and money. They shielded these abusers for decades, and if left untouched, they will protect them again. So our goal should be to dismantle these systems to make sure that they never silence another victim. Bollywood's Me Too movement may have pulled the curtain, but the stage remained largely unchanged. Mollywood must make sure that does not happen. A controversy is brewing in the global entertainment world. The American rapper Macklemore is making headlines because he just cancelled a concert in Dubai. Macklemore says he cancelled the concert in protest. He did it to oppose the UAE's alleged role in the Sudan conflict. Sudan is going through an almost forgotten war, a war that has been raging in this country for 16 months. Yet it gets far less coverage than the wars in Ukraine and Gaza, perhaps because it's a civil war or maybe because the world tends to ignore African conflicts altogether. Whatever the reason for the poor coverage, the Macklemore boycott has put Sudan back on center stage, and it has reignited the controversial story of the UAE's involvement. Here's our report.
The American rapper known as Macklemore is making waves again because of his political activism. The 41-year-old rapper is a supporter of the Palestinian cause, even penning down a pro-Palestine song a few months ago. But now he has turned his attention to the war in Sudan. Macklemore recently put up this post on Instagram. He announced that he would be cancelling a concert which was to take place in October in Dubai. Why? Because of the raging civil war in Sudan and the UAE's alleged role in the conflict. The civil war in Sudan has been on for over 16 months. On one side, you have the Sudanese armed forces, led by Sudan's de facto leader, General Abdel Fattah al-Burhan. Having taken power in 2019, Burhan solidified his rule after a coup in 2021. But he didn't do it alone. A warlord helped him. That's General Mohammed Hamdan Dagalo, who also goes by the name Hemeti. Hemeti is the leader of a powerful paramilitary group known as the Rapid Support Forces, or RSF. Burhan and Hemeti had a falling out in 2023. This spat escalated into a full-blown civil war, killing thousands and displacing millions. Now, where does the UAE come into all of this?
And we name here the official and regional sponsor of criminal militias, namely the United Arab Emirates, whose support and weaponry leads to entrenching the suffering and the misery of civilians in Sudan.
Sudan's junta says that the UAE is supporting Hemeti and the RSF. The UAE has been accused of sending weapons to the RSF to prop up Hemeti's forces. Why would the UAE do this? Reportedly for two reasons. One is influence. The Sudan civil war has been described as a proxy war between Saudi Arabia and the UAE. Abu Dhabi allegedly wants to expand its influence in the greater Arab world and limit Riyadh's. Saudi Arabia is reportedly backing Burhan, so the UAE has allegedly chosen to back Hemeti. The other reason being cited for the UAE's position is gold. Hemeti is a warlord. He controls territory and resources, including gold mines. He allegedly made a fortune selling this gold to the UAE. The UAE has been accused of having an insatiable appetite for gold. It imports billions of dollars worth of gold every year, and a lot of it apparently comes from Africa. Reports say that Sudan is a source of smuggled gold for the UAE, and Hemeti is said to play a role in this. Of course, Abu Dhabi denies the charges.
We see this as a shameful abuse by one of the warring parties of Sudan of this council, using this platform to spread false allegations against the UAE.
Despite these denials, Burhan and the Sudanese junta are convinced that the UAE is working against them. They refuse to take part in peace talks if the UAE is involved. This has led to an impasse and prolonged the war. So, Macklemore's boycott probably won't do much to change the situation on the ground. But it has brought some much-needed attention to the raging conflict.
Before our last story tonight, let me ask you a question. How are the Monday blues treating you? At what point did they unleash the wrath? Was it that email you checked as soon as you opened your eyes this morning? Or did the blues never end in the first place thanks to that super duper urgent project over the weekend? We are not stalking you. This is just a sign of the times, of the blurring lines between work life and personal life. But if you are in Australia, we have good news for you. Starting today, this blurry line is outlawed. Australia has introduced a new law. It is called the right to disconnect. It offers relief to workers across the country. They will no longer have to take their work home. If the workday is over, people can ignore office-related communication, be it texts, calls or emails, without the fear of being punished. If bosses fail to comply with the law, they will have a heavy price to pay. They will be fined. How much? About $13,000 for an employee and $64,000 for companies. But before you sue your boss, do know that there's a catch. There always is. The law does not ban contact after work hours. It simply gives staff the right not to reply. So your boss can still email you at midnight, but you don't have to read it. You have the passive-aggressive but legal right to ignore. Because the idea is this. If you aren't being paid 24 hours a day, you should not be penalized for not being available 24 hours a day. Simple enough. And how are people taking it? Unsurprisingly, Australian workers are overjoyed. They have welcomed the move.
I think it's actually really important that we have laws like this. We spend so much of our time connected to our phones, connected to our emails all day. And I think that it's really hard to switch off as it is. So, yeah, I'm all for it.
But not everyone is happy with the law. Critics cite two problems. Despite the law, workers in high-pressure industries or the service industry could feel obliged to always be on. This is the first problem. And it is true. Not all workers are equal under this law.
I think it's an excellent idea. I hope it catches on. I doubt it'll catch on in our industry, to tell the truth, though.
Why not?
Well, you know, we are professionals. We're well paid. We're expected to deliver, and we feel we have to deliver 24 hours a day if we have to. So the phone's always on, the computer's always on, and we're working.
That being said, critics, especially some employers, cite a second problem. They say disconnecting from work after hours will hurt productivity. But this is a myth. Years of research says so. Unpaid overtime work is bad for employee well-being. Less of it promotes work-life balance. This leads to less stress, less tiredness, more happiness and personal fulfillment. So when people show up to work, they feel more refreshed. They have better productivity. And this is not all theoretical. We are already seeing the right to disconnect in action. You see, the law may be new to Australia, but about 20 other countries already have it, including South American and Asian nations. But no one disconnects like Europe. France pioneered the law in 2017. It was the first country to introduce it. Others followed suit. Recently, a study was conducted across companies covered by the law in Europe. 70% workers saw a positive impact. They reported better work-life balance and higher productivity. Now, the right to disconnect is fairly new, but so far science approves of it. So do most workers. But here's a quick reality check. This law will not work everywhere. Sure, the right gives people an out, but not everyone wants to take it. Sometimes out of guilt, sometimes out of fear, because at this point, overwork is also a cultural phenomenon. And changing that requires more than just a law. It demands greater awareness and acceptance. Acceptance of the fact that work is a crucial part of life. It is not life. And we should work because we want to. No matter the reason, joy, money, personal fulfillment, there is nothing wrong with working during a weekend, nothing wrong with checking an email first thing in the morning, but as long as you want to, not because you're obligated to, not out of the fear of punishment. So our point here is quite simple. The right to disconnect is a welcome change for those who want to disconnect. It can restore balance and strengthen boundaries. But remember that our boundaries are not just for others, they're also for ourselves. So until there is an internal shift, we will never achieve the true right to disconnect. Think about it.
और उसकी पूजा करते हैं और यहाँ पे हमारी अपनी बहनों बेटियों के साथ इस तरह का व्यवहार देखने को मिले तो मेरा तो इस मामले पर बोलने को भी मुझे शब्द नहीं मिलते कि कितने कड़े शब्दों का प्रयोग किया जाए।
CNN News 18's Neetu Regukumar spoke with Beena Paul, who's the film editor and a member of the Women in Cinema Collective. Remember, Women in Cinema Collective was the one organization that had many important females from the industry, very, very reputed names, including actors like Parvati, who were part of that collective. They had raised severe allegations of sexual harassment and workplace harassment when it is about the Malayalam film industry. Now, Beena Paul, has in fact spoken about the resignations, these high-profile resignations of not just director Ranjit, but also actor Siddique. Let's take a look.
Two resignations in the morning itself, one by State Chalachitra Academy and filmmaker chairman and filmmaker Ranjit, and Siddique, who is also the General Secretary of the Association of Malayalam Movie Artists. How do you see this resignation as someone who has been in the industry for long and also as a founding member of the Women in Cinema Collective?
Well, what the Women in Cinema Collective has been saying all along is that
now it's time for Vantage Shots, images that tell the story. India marks the festival of